Hi, I'm Dan Mugai reporting for the Lobby Observer, and I'm here with Ms. Power, a Westboro High School teacher and alumni. Ms. Power, can you share what your Westboro High School experience was like?
Yeah, so I graduated about 10 years ago. I'm coming up on our 10-year reunion. My Westboro High School experience was definitely a great one. I really enjoyed going to high school here. I was involved with a lot of the sports teams, so that is definitely a highlight from when I think back on my high school career. I was a 12-season athlete, so I ended up playing 4 years of basketball, 4 years of softball, and I had 3 seasons of cross country in the fall. And then my senior year, the soccer team, since they knew I played basketball, needed a goalie, and so they asked me to be their goalie for my last season of my fall sport.
Did you guys ever make it into the playoffs with any of your teams?
So our softball team wasn't so great, so not with softball. For soccer we did. We had a good run my senior year. I ended up losing to Shrewsbury under the lights in I think it was the district semifinals. So we had won a game or two for soccer. And then my junior year for basketball, we actually won the districts and made it to the state semis. So that was a really exciting experience.
How was the fan attendance at the sports teams back then compared to how it is now?
I definitely think that it was a little bit higher than. I think in general the boys' sports tend to get a little bit more fans than the girls' sports. But that year we had a really good run. We did have good fan base. They had a fan bus come out. Our game was out in UMass Amherst, so a little bit of a hike, but we had a pretty good fan section that night, and especially for our district final game at WPI. So it was a really fun experience, and yeah.
Sounds fun. What changes did you notice in school since you were last here as a student?
Some of the big changes I think are the cell phones and like the technology and things like that. I know I personally didn't have a cell phone until my senior year, and it was one of those like little brick pay-as-you-go phones, and had none of the capabilities of things that they have now. And I think there's definitely positives and negatives to the technology thing. I think the classes seem to be a little more quiet if there's free time. Everyone's individually on their phone rather than just talking with a neighbor and someone in your group, or maybe somebody you wouldn't necessarily hang out with outside of school. But then there's obviously some good things that everybody can be using their computers and like working on an essay or researching, and I think there's definitely some pros and cons to both.
Was there a particular time or event that sparked your interest in education, such as a class in school?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed math in high school, so I kind of knew I wanted to do something with math, whether it was business or accounting or something with math. I always liked math. And I had some really great math teachers, Mrs. DeBoer and Mr. Richards. They both were here when I was here, and I did an internship with Mr. Richards during my senior year, and I think they were both role models, and I always liked working with students and kids, and I liked helping out in his class. I liked babysitting, little things like that.
Were there any particular electives that stood out to you as a student here?
For electives, I think I took a couple cooking classes. I always liked those. I loved gym class. If I could have taken gym every semester, I would have. I absolutely loved doing things in gym. And yeah, I think I never did an art class or drawing or anything like that. I kind of wish I did now, but I did some business ones and things like that.
So where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Delaware.
What major did you start out as?
I started out as a business major, actually. I kind of knew I probably wanted to be a teacher, but when you're 18 and your dad's telling you should do one thing, you tend to do the opposite. So that was kind of exactly where I started out. He wanted me to be a teacher, and I was like, oh, I don't know, I want to do business. And luckily my uncle's in accounting, so after my first semester I was not too sure I wanted to do business anymore. He let me come into his accounting firm for a day, and that definitely decided I had wanted nothing to do with business. It was the longest 8 hours ever, and I did not want to sit in an office all day, and I decided I wanted to try to do something else with math, and so math education was what I started with my second semester.
Did you know you would be teaching at Westboro High School, looking back to when you were 18?
No, definitely not. I always knew I really liked our high school. I thought, even as a student, that the teachers seemed genuinely happy here. And you don't see that everywhere. So I did my student teaching down in Delaware, which was definitely a different experience. I was in like an inner city schools that had not a lot of money. So it was definitely different types of student issues and problems and things like that. And the teachers definitely had a tougher time, I would say, at that school. But I knew I wanted to come back up to Massachusetts. I wanted to be closer to my family, and I didn't know exactly where I'd end up.
What challenges and solutions do you see in education today?
I would say that one of the biggest challenges is just the pressure from college and like the SATs and the ACTs and just the overall pressure on the students. I think I don't know exactly what the solution is, but I know as a teacher, all of the pressure of the topics we have to cover in a year and the things that we have to get through, and it definitely takes away a little bit from like the teacher-student relationship, and having to just and not to have time to like go really deep into certain topics, and to not really have the choice, and just be having to kind of almost teach the test in a sense of we have to get through things that are on the SATs, especially in the math world. And I just feel that, I wish the students could have time to just be a kid and just take some classes that you're not sure if you're interested in or things like that. And I think sometimes, there's way too much pressure from the colleges especially. I know when I was applying to schools, it was like people would apply for anywhere from like 5 to 8 schools and things like that. And now it's like well into the 20s. Yeah. So I don't know what the solution is, but I think something has to give somewhere along the lines, because I think the kids the anxiety and things are through the roof, and I wish that it would not be that way.
So you would say that when you were in high school, the pressure was definitely lower on the students and the teachers?
It seemed to be. I don't know exactly how it was on the teachers, but I definitely think as a student, I know personally, I don't think I was as stressed out or anxious as I see today in some of my students. So. And I don't know, I think part of it must have to do with all the social media and things like that, like some of the outside of school things, little things like if some of my friends went somewhere after school, I didn't really know about it. But now, like with Snapchat and Instagram, like I feel like that feeling of being left out like is heightened because of things like that. And I think that definitely adds some hard pressures and things from the high school perspective.
Was it challenging gaining the respect of students coming back as a young teacher out of college?
Yeah, definitely at times. I actually taught my first year of teaching at Groton Dunstable High School, which I think was kind of nice because no one really knew me there. I think teaching here, my first year teaching, would have been a little bit harder, especially because I have younger brothers, so they still knew some people in this school. And my brother was actually a senior when I first started teaching, so I did not want anything to do with Westboro High School that year. And I ended up teaching at Westboro the year after he graduated, and it was funny. Some of his friends that were still seniors would yell like, "Hey Liz," down the hall, and I'd have to be like, you can't say that here," and little things like that. So I think, being a little stricter as a younger teacher, just to help gain, some respect from the students, and they know that it's not just going to be a blow-off class or things like that. But overall, I think I handled that pretty well.
Why did you choose to coach basketball coming back?
I just loved basketball. Basketball was definitely my favorite sport growing up. I had some great coaches, and I just wanted to help instill some of those values and things that I learned from sports into some of my players. And it's also fun just seeing some of your students in a different way, like getting to see them in an activity that they're choosing to do, and see some of their interests and get to know them on a different level than just like a student. So I knew I always wanted to be involved, whether it was someday in the future with my kids coaching travel or something, or coaching at the high school level. So I'm happy that I've had that opportunity.
Are any of the coaches or teachers that were around back then still around today?
Yeah, so Mr. Kittredge was my basketball coach when we had our nice big run, and so it's really fun coaching with him now, so that's kind of neat. And yeah, a lot of the math department is the same. I had Mr. Kittredge as well for AP Stat. I had Mrs. DeBoer, Mr. Richards. So yeah, a lot of the department is the same. And same thing with some of the other departments. Like Mr. Belbin was one of my history teachers. Dr. Ryan's been here for a while. I never actually had him, but a lot of the teachers have been here for a long time, which also says something about the school district in general, that teachers, want to be here, and it's a good place.
Did you guys have any traditions as seniors?
So for seniors, let's see. The first day of school, we had a similar tradition. We still did the number out on the turf. We had that little parade in, but back then we would drive in. So everyone would meet down by like the Arturo's parking lot, and they would let us, we'd have like a police escort, and we'd all drive through the Rotary. So we get to do like a little loop and then head to school. So a little bit different because I think they do the walking
we
down
walk
Charles
around.
Street.
Yeah.
So that similar tradition, but a little different. I think somebody got rear-ended at some point, which must have been why they ended up changing that, because it was definitely a bit chaotic that morning with the horns honking and things like that.
Any senior pranks that you guys had?
Yeah, my our year, I was not involved with this, was the year with the handicap signs out back on the. They were painted all over the back parking lot. I think Fox News came and like had a helicopter over it. It was one of the good ones, and I always remember the custodians saying it was a decent prank because it wasn't too hard on them. They did end up having to paint over them, so that must have been annoying. So I apologize about that, but I had nothing to do with that. But that was class of '09.
Going back to your class load and electives, what was your hardest class as a student?
Ooh, my hardest class. The class that I definitely struggled in the most was honors bio. That was just not my thing. I don't think the teacher I had is even here anymore, but that was definitely a tough class for me. I had to put in a lot of effort for that. And then my senior year, I would say AP Stat, which was kind of one of those classes where I ended up learning more than I thought at the time, because when I ended up taking statistics in college, I was like, oh, I actually did learn a lot. But it was definitely good exposure to a college class in high school, but it was different math than I had ever learned before, so that was definitely one of my biggest challenges, I would say.
Thank you, Ms. Power. I'm Dan McGuire signing off with the Lobby Observer.